War, sanctions, tariffs, Trump 2.0, or let's just get it straight to the point, make inflation great again. Everything that's happening now is going to cause inflation to absolutely skyrocket. So I'm probably going to break this podcast into three different parts. This is going to be part one, where we're going to focus on tariffs. That is something that will exacerbate the inflation problem to a much higher level. So we're going to glance at a history. We're going to glance at some of the current solutions that are being proposed to solve some of the problems that United States is facing. And I'm going to give you the answer of how you would actually be able to trade that. See, it's understanding the trajectory of the inflation that's going to position you to beat the market in 2025 in a profound way. Because currently, what I'm about to describe, it is not yet priced in the markets, as the market is trading at all-time highs, a few days after Trump inauguration. I'm recording this on January 25th, 2025, guys. So without any further ado, let's dive into the first part of the make inflation great again. And largely, it derives from the proposed tariffs. The tariffs are about to kick in on Canada and Mexico. The 25% proposed tariffs in just a few days on February 1st. Now, this comes at a very awkward time because one of the most pressing issues in the United States is to reconstruct the fire damage in California. So what you already see is a situation where you're going to need a lot of materials. Well, guess where all these materials to reconstruct California are coming from? Normally, a lot of timber, lumber is coming from Canada. So by placing a 25% tariff on Canadian imports, I mean, you're really increasing the cost of construction materials to rebuild all these homes and structures in California. The tariffs, a lot of materials for construction also come from China, which Trump is talking about a potential 60% tariff on some of these products that in desperate need of the United States to reconstruct California. And needless to say, I mean, the cheapest stuff comes out of Mexico, and that's going to be subject to 25% tariff too. So if you look across the board, at a moment where United States needs the cheapest possible cost of goods, materials to reconstruct California, that's the moment when the tariffs are going to kick in. And so naturally, it's going to increase the cost of reconstruction. Now, also on another note, all these deportations that are taking place now, I mean, how do you think that's going to impact the cost of reconstruction? So not only are you going to have higher cost materials, but you're also looking at having higher cost labor, as most of the jobs held by people that are literally getting deported right now as we speak. I mean, Mexicans hold probably the greatest share of the construction jobs in California, as well the agriculture. So these recent natural disasters, they're going to impact the cost of everything throughout the United States when it comes to the agriculture. Don't be shocked if, you're going to walk into a grocery store and the grocery store either is going to completely miss some agricultural items on the shelves, or they're going to be priced absolutely to the moon. So the recent crops were hit in California, and that's one problem. Now, the crops that did survive, the workers are not showing up to pick them up, and a lot of this products that would have hit the shelf, they're currently being wasted. So anything that comes from California for the other states, like Florida, Florida grows oranges, but they don't grow grapes. So there's just a whole set of dominoes that, that's about to cause the pricing of everything to skyrocket. I would dare to predict that inflation in California is probably going to hit a level that we have not seen in United States history since the 70s. I mean, we're talking about probably inflation levels going up to like 15, 20, 25% is possible in California. So due to all these reasons, you got higher material costs, you have higher labor costs as a result of the cheap labor being evacuated out of the country. You have, the whole state is just totally unprepared for this substantial increase in the cost of goods and services in both instances. I mean, this is highly, highly inflationary. And again, it's a domino effect. So it doesn't just, what's happening in California right now doesn't just concern California. I would say California is going to be the greatest inflationary state out of all the states in the United States. But, it's going to trickle down throughout, the rest of the United States that were not even impacted by natural disasters. So, guys, inflation prices are going through the roof, okay? The cost of living in California clearly goes through the roof. The rents are already up 3x in a lot of areas from where they were just a month ago. So prices are literally, they are skyrocketing. So I would not be looking forward as a result to being bullish on the market during the next CPI report. The CPI report that we're about to witness this Friday is probably not going to be crazily bad yet, but the following month, that's when these numbers are going to really kick in. And if you're trying to trade it on the bullish side, oh my God, it's going to get ugly. It's going to get completely, it's going to be a shock for the market, because if you thought yields were going higher, yields are literally about to skyrocket. And they're thinking, okay, well, the point of no return is probably 5.5% on a 10-year yield. I would say it could get worse than that. So basically, understanding what I just explained to you, and this is just a small part of the picture, the simplest trade is to just short the fuck out of bonds. Bonds are going to collapse, okay? When this next fuel inflation reports, when they hit, okay, and it's going to be very difficult to hide the numbers. When these inflation reports are going to hit, it's going to be a shocker. And even if they try to hide the numbers, it is still going to be a shocker, because the numbers are just simply undeniable what's happening right now. So some of the things that are only going to make things worse, the solutions that are proposed. So let's glance at the history for a moment to help you understand the subject of inflation a little bit better. And we're going to do that by slightly examining the history of the Reagan administration, Hoover administration, and McKinley administration, since these are the McKinley and Reagan, those are the presidents that Trump looks up to, especially during his inauguration. He specifically was so zoomed in and focused on McKinley that it really pays to go through the McKinley administration to understand some of the policies and some of the things that Trump is likely to proceed with and really implement. So there is a reason he spent so much time at inauguration talking about renaming the mountain in Alaska in favor of President McKinley. So if we take a look in history, McKinley was really, before he was even elected to become the president in 1896, he was a part of the Congress. In 1890, he came up with a proposal, the idea of tariffs, basically in a way to protect the United States manufacturing industry. So notice that the idea of tariffs is a good idea. It is designed to protect existing industries in the United States. And so that idea actually caught fire back in the 1890s, and McKinley ran with it, and that's how he was able to get elected, because at the time being, everybody was looking at the immediate effect of tariffs, and it appeared like they were working for a brief amount of time until people really started to realize the longer term effects of tariffs, which were quite ugly. And so if we're literally to examine the McKinley administration when it comes to tariffs, they were perceived to be successful for a moment until they basically died away. And that is actually partially why he was not able to get reelected. He got reelected. He got shot. I mean, that's a side note. But the tariffs became unpopular and they were dying away. After McKinley, Roosevelt came into power, and he stayed away from tariffs basically. So they proved to summarize the McKinley presidency, they appeared to be a good thing in disguise, but as a result, they became very unpopular once people realized, well, shit, it's backfiring at the United States economy. Now, the key thing here is to understand when it comes to tariffs, again, is the idea of tariffs is designed to protect the existing industry. The same philosophy was used under the Hoover administration, 1929 for 1933. And again, the idea was to protect the existing industries in the United States. And that doesn't go well at all, because the idea was just, to come up with a few items at the time to protect the agriculture. And by the time the legislation passed, the tariffs, instead of just a few items on the list, you had like 20,000 items, and that didn't work, because guess what happens next? Well, the whole world retaliates against those tariffs. So we didn't see the kind of retaliation to tariffs during the McKinley administration, but we did see a huge retaliation from Europe and the whole world to the tariffs that were placed under the Hoover administration, and that is partially why the country went through such a severe depression. I mean, there were other reasons, clearly, but that was one of the contributing reasons. So basically, the idea, I mean, people come up with great ideas that seem on the surface like they're great fucking ideas, okay? But when you really, from the economic standpoint of view, when you really try to study and analyze them, some of these great ideas that appear to be great on the surface, they end up not being such great ideas after all. Give it a little bit of time. One of the examples I could bring to your attention is probably communism, socialism. The idea of communism was a great one. It was to make everyone equally well off. But the result of communism is it made everyone equally poor. So the idea of communism was great, but the long-term effect of communism was not so great. So it's kind of the same with tariffs. The idea of tariffs to protect the existing industries are great, but they backfired in the McKinley administration. They backfired Hoover administration. They also backfired during the Reagan administration when he decides to tariff the hell out of Japan and Germany and other countries. So in every instance where we can go back and study the history of tariffs, they appear to be a great idea. Now, in all of those three presidential terms that I just brought to your attention, there was one thing to consider. Okay, at those instances, United States actually did have something to protect. There were actually industries that were producing the same things that some of the other parts of the world were producing. And so, therefore, it made sense to protect those industries. In some extent, you do get some initial benefit, potentially, which is overshadowed by long-term negative outcomes. So again, the key is to have an existing industry. When Trump is talking about placing a tariff on China, there is so much stuff that is currently being made in China that United States does not make. So when you place a 60% tariff is what's being discussed now on China, on Chinese industries, what you're really doing is you're literally just inflating the prices of goods, because a lot of the stuff that China makes, United States does not make. So you are really defying the whole idea of the tariff strategy, because you're placing tariffs on something that your country does not even make at the moment. And some could argue, okay, but isn't that what's going to make United States produce that stuff on their own? Yes, that is correct. But it's not going to happen today, and it's not going to happen tomorrow, because it requires capital investment. Intensive capital investments would have to go into building factories, training workers, obtaining licenses and everything that people would have to go through. And by the time you calculate the labor costs and the material costs, which again are going to come in now for the United States at a much higher price than they were in not so distant past. When you do all these numbers together, it's going to become very problematic for someone to get behind these ideas and put an insane amount of capital into something that is basically a gamble, whether it's going to make money in the future or not. So in that sense, a tariff is absolutely a waste of money that American people would be spending, okay? And most people, maybe I should explain it a little bit. Most of the people in the United States still think that a tariff is a tax on China. It's a tax on Canada. It's a tax on Mexico. That is not the case. People are just confused. Unfortunately, people in America are so easily brainwashed about everything. People are just clueless about what's going on in the world. So I'm going to break this down to clear things up, okay? When someone buys something from China, someone in the United States buys something from China, let's say they ordered some, cosmetic products, and they arrive to United States. So let's say they arrive to the port of Houston. And now the person that ordered them needs to pick them up, okay? They have to file some kind of paperwork. Normally it would be like an import department of imports that will have some kind of paper that needs to be filled out saying, okay, how many items you got coming in? Okay, it's cosmetics. Well, cosmetics from China, okay, it's 60% tax now. So now, not only would you, as a United States buyer, you would have to, first you pay the bill to China for the actual cost of these cosmetic products. And then once the products are in the port of Houston, you would actually have to go file some paperwork and make another payment, 60% of the value that you paid already to China. So the cost of goods that was the face value, let's say, of $100, now becomes the cost of goods to the person that's buying it in the United States to the magnitude of $160. So notice, who is paying that bill? It is the person that ordered those products from China that needs to pick them up in Houston or anywhere in the United States for that matter. But before those products will be released to that person buying them in the United States, they would have to pay extra 60% based on the value of the products that they bought. So needless to say, just going into a lot of details, a lot of people created the Shopify business, Amazon stores. A lot of these products, okay, majority of them are not made in the United States. Majority of those products are made in China, outside of the United States, and That means if you're running the business, an online business, if you're selling any kind of physical product, your cost of doing business is going to go up anywhere from 25 to 60%. So as a result of that, you would think that depending on other overhead costs that a particular business that buys goods outside of the United States, depending on the overhead expenses that they also have for the business, some would make a choice to possibly raise the price. Some would make a choice to keep the price the same and earn less, but that basically means that now the business that was making 100%, now they're going to make 60% less. Basically, the business becomes a lot less profitable because now they're paying the United States government the 60% normally that they would have earned. So hopefully that this explanation illustration gets you thinking, why the prices would really go up. See, it's not, China's not paying shit, okay? It's the person that is buying the goods in the United States that would have to pay the money. And so that is why they compare tariffs to the income tax. So on one hand, it sounds good when Trump says, okay, I'm going to cut the taxes. Okay, but on the other hand, he turns around right away, and what is he doing? Okay, well, a lot of people are bitching about the salt tax. Okay, that's been going up and up. Now you have tariffs, which increase the cost of goods to the consumer in the United States who's actually paying them. So, okay, you can cut the one tax, but if you keep raising all the other taxes, okay, then you're really not cutting taxes. You possibly are increasing taxes. Okay, because that's what happened during the Reagan administration. Again, when you want to understand Trump policies, you want to go back, study Reagan administration. You want to partially study the Hoover administration, especially the part that deals with the Smoot and Haley Act and the outcomes of that. And the McNeely administration. You take those three administrations, you study their campaign promises versus actuality of what has transpired once they came into power, and you're going to have a very clear understanding that everything that Trump policies are designed to do, they're doing exactly the opposite of what they're designed to do. So the idea that Trump campaigned on was good. It was to kill inflation. It was to lower inflation. But let's deviate from the subject for just a moment and let's talk about the oil prices, because recently it was a big headline, right? It was hilarious. It was absolutely fucking hilarious. But high oil prices means inflation, right? So since Trump started, oil prices are up. They're now nowhere nearly as up as they should be up, but they are up. And, the main proposal of Trump is drill, baby, drill. So the idea is, of course, if more United States companies are going to drill and the supply is going to increase, then the price of oil would come down, right? So, however, the idea of it sounds good. But in actuality, that shit is never going to work. If the ultimate goal is to drive the prices lower on oil, then what would be the incentive for United States drillers to go ahead and drill, baby, drill? So they can fucking produce oil and sell it at a loss? Who's going to be interested in fucking doing that? Nobody. So when you take a look at oil prices in the last few years have ranged between, $65 and $130 at the highest, average probably being around $70, $80. If Trump is going to sell you on the idea, drill, baby, drill, you got to understand one simple fact, that there needs to be a monetary incentive for the companies in the United States to actually drill. Simple number that you should remember is the method to produce oil in the United States is known as fracking, and most of the companies' average cost of extracting oil using that method is between $60 and $65. So let's call it average, maybe $62.50. So $62.50 is the actual cost. So if the goal to drive prices lower, well, oil prices run out 74. As of the last trading day, 74.50 roughly. So if oil was to drop just 10%, I mean, all the oil companies in the United States would just be barely breaking even. So who would be interested in doing that shit? Okay. So the idea of drill baby drill sounds good, but in actuality, it has such a low probability of actually taking place. So the last oil report we had was Friday, the 24th at 1:30. And while Trump, what you hear in the news is drill baby drill. But what's happening in actuality is now you have 4 less oil rigs that are drilling oil in the United States. So while the headlines make you think, hey, drill baby drill, hey, we're gonna drill some fucking oil, oil price is gonna drop. What's happening in real time is you have less oil rigs out there extracting gas. That is as of yesterday's report. So the probability of lowering oil prices just by going around making speeches, drill baby drill, that shit ain't gonna happen. All right. So the problem, it's inflationary, high oil prices, right? The solution that Trump is offering is that, well, the first solution he offered said, hey, I will put more sanctions on Russia. And I was thinking to myself, like, seriously, dude? Like, for real? Like, I mean, isn't sanctions the stuff that makes oil prices go higher? That is your brilliant solution? We're going to sanction the fuck out of Russia? Guys, I mean, the solutions that he's offering, drill baby drill, put more sanctions on Russia, okay? And the last one, you absolutely got to, I mean, I was rolling, I was laughing my ass off, okay? He says, I'm going to call the Saudis and I'm going to ask them to lower oil prices. I fell off the fucking chair, okay? The question is simple. Why the fuck would Saudis drop the prices voluntarily on their main industry that feeds, the entire Saudi economy? Okay? And the second follow-up question, since we're talking a little bit of history in this podcast, would be, well, have you ever heard of the 1973 oil embargo? Well, what happened in 1973, for those of you maybe forgot, whatnot, well, Yom Kippur War, all right, basically, Saudis said, well, since you are helping Israel with all these weapons, and since you're helping Israel invade all the surrounding countries, okay, we're not going to supply any oil to the United States, okay? So now knowing that history, and that was the very fact that caused a huge inflation back in the 70s, that caused the market to crash between 1973 and 1974 by as much as 51%. Within 6 months, okay? Anyone that studies history would think this is the greatest fucking joke of all times. So, hold on. In 73, Saudis told you to fuck off, and now you think you're just gonna call them and say, hey, guys, why don't you lower the oil prices for me? Like, this is the biggest fucking joke in the world. Now, what makes it is even a bigger joke right, is the first solution that he offers to solving the oil price dilemma, as put sanctions on Russia, okay? When you're talking to the Saudis, okay, which basically run OPEC, well, there's such thing as OPEC, which are the members, but there is even a bigger sphere of influence on OPEC, known as OPEC Plus, which includes Russia. So it is the OPEC organization back in 1973 that told the United States to fuck off and caused the oil prices to go to the moon. Now you're going to sanction a member of OPEC Plus, and then you're going to call them and say, hey, can you lower the prices, please? That shit's got zero probability of happening. Zero. I would say it's got negative probability of fucking happening. So, problem is high oil prices. Solution is drill, baby, drill. Sanction the fuck out of Russia, which, well, that's been done for many years, in particularly for the last 3 years, and it has backfired in a big way. To our now people are cold, and Britain and in Germany, is economy. All of the economies in Europe are falling the fuck apart. Okay, Russian economy is exploding. Okay, in a good kind of way. So, if that's the solution, tariffs and sanctions. I don't think this would be the time then to short oil. Particularly when, all the solutions probably going to cause the oil prices to go high. And I'm not saying oil is going to go high tomorrow. I'm not saying oil is going to, but overall, considering that Trump is spending so much time talking about lowering oil prices, I would say exactly the opposite is going to take place throughout the year. Not to say that there's going to be moments when possibly the headlines are going to be like, Trump is trying to make a peace deal with Ukraine and this and this and this and this. Like, guys, that's a subject for the next podcast, because war is something that is one of the biggest inflation drivers throughout history. So in this podcast, we're going to focus on tariffs and sanctions, but in the next part, I'm going to cover the war part of the inflation story. So, sanctions is a whole nother subject too. I'll leave it for probably another podcast. But guys, the problem of higher oil prices. So we have higher cost of materials, we have higher cost of labor for the United States, and now we're going to have higher oil prices. So by definition, inflation, just based off what I've shared with you so far, inflation is going higher. It's not going lower, because there's no real solutions that make sense that are on the table right now. Okay, you wanna lower inflation, guys? It can be solved in 3 simple fucking steps. You stop the wars around the world, okay, which based off everything Trump is doing right now, he appointed some of the biggest war hawks around him. This Pete guy, he's ready to go to war right now. It's unbelievable the guy was able to get appointed as a defense secretary. But, that shit, it's going to get ugly. So, you've got you want lower oil prices, you want fucking lower inflation, okay? You stop the war around the world, that's one, okay? You cut out all the fucking sanctions, okay? While we were on the subject of oil, I forgot to mention that, this is how stupid and ridiculous it is. So, many people don't know that, but the country with the greatest oil reserves, okay, it's not Russia, okay, it's not United States, it's not Canada, it's not Kuwait, it's not the Saudis. The country with the largest oil reserves in the entire fucking world is Venezuela. You want lower oil prices? You stop sanctioning the fuck out of Venezuela. Okay? You bring their oil in the market, oil prices are going to drop. But no, They put a $25 million bounty on Maduro. Like, trying to fucking overthrow Maduro government, just like they did this shit back in the late 80s in Panama. And like, the whole world just seems to be okay with it, I guess, until a certain point. But like, as far as the solution to the inflation, okay, if you just remove sanctions from Russia and Venezuela, oh, and forget, there's this one other country that's also a very big fucking oil producer, but you sanctioned the shit out of them too, which is Iran. So you take sanctions off Venezuela, Iran, and Russia, oil's going to be at fucking $50 next week. Okay, if you want lower oil prices and lower inflation. But of course, that is what you're looking at the headlines, and the solution is being offered is not removing the sanctions. It is increasing the sanctions, which is the very fucking thing that has been proven time after time to actually drive oil prices higher. So when you guys are looking as a trader at these headlines, you got to understand that some of these headlines can produce a short-term movement in the direction of a particular thing that you're trading. For example, oil futures, gold futures. Some of these headlines could produce an instant impact on the direction of S&P 500 that day. But always understand that take any headline with a big grain of salt, because most of the time the market is going to make that reaction, is going to overall bigger move, is going to evolve in an entirely opposite direction. So that is something to keep in mind as you're trading in 2025. Okay, but guys, back to the tariffs. You know, Trump recently mentioned that he wants to impose 100% tariffs on BRICS nations. So let me underline the problem first. I'm going to describe the proposed solution, and then I'm going to, you know, basically give you the trade that you can put together as a result. Okay, so the problem is this. Trump is not happy that dollar is losing its dominance, because if you study the statistics of the settlements of the international trade settlements, now less and less transactions are settled in dollars, and less countries are making a decision in favor of settling transactions in United States dollars. So Trump said that it's a problem, and he's not going to let some BRICS bullshit, basically what he said, take over the dollar. Now, hear this proposed solution. I mean, this is like, man, this is comedy fucking 101. All right. So the problem is less countries are using dollar. The solution is, this is what Trump says: I will impose 100% tariffs on BRICS. And for those of you, you know, maybe living under a rock, BRICS is like Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, Indonesia, United Arab Emirates. So it just happens so that BRICS is about just a bit short of half of the world population. I mean, having India and China there alone, and Indonesia is like, man, I mean, we're talking about, guys, we're talking like close to 3.6 billion people, okay? BRICS. So literally his solution to make dollar popular again is to tariff the fuck out of half population, 50% population of the world. Like, that's gonna make them use the dollar more. Okay, so I mean, let's just hold on. Wouldn't that make those countries increase their trade with other countries who don't impose 100% tariff. And those countries probably would prefer to conduct free trade without ultimatums imposed by United States. And wouldn't that cause them to even settle less transactions in United States dollar? Wouldn't the very solution that Trump is proposing produce the exact opposite effect? Now, he's proposing this 100% tariffs on BRICS. At the same time, hey, the Mexican tariffs about to kick in, Canada tariffs to kick in, and he's threatening Europe with tariffs. So basically, what do you have here? Trump against the world? I mean, tariff the fuck out of the world is what you've got. And that is the solution to fix inflation? Like, let me rewind this back to the detailed explanation one more time of who pays the fucking tariff. The BRIC, is it China? Is it South Africa? Is it Indonesia? Is it India? Is it Brazil? Who is paying the tariff? It's the United States consumer. It's the United States business that's now either have to make a decision to make less, and therefore less money goes into the U.S. economy, or the prices go up, or a combination of both, which all of the three outcomes are negative for the United States. Especially considering that if you impose 100% tariff on BRICS nations, I guarantee you there's some things that they make that United States does not make, which defeats the idea of the tariff. Tariff is supposed to protect an industry which you already have. But now you want to just tariff the whole fucking world, including industries which don't even fucking exist in the United States. Which basically, then, you're not protecting anything. Basically, this means you're simply increasing the prices and cutting the profitability of the United States businesses. Overall, prices go up. So, there you go. I mean, guys, technically, I could be going on about this, guys, for hours, giving you example after an example after an example. But one of the problems that is a big problem if you study the 1980s, it is the problem of the trade deficit. Now, trade deficit is something that Trump is against, okay? But trade deficit is a direct result of United States not making something and buying that stuff that they don't make from another country. So if United States does not make that thing now, it doesn't mean that it's going to be able to make it tomorrow. It could take a year, 2, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years for some industries to be actually productionally and running. So we're not talking about a quick solution that's gonna hit the market of the United States tomorrow as a result, and all of these jobs are going to be created, and the trickle down effect of these jobs and money pouring in as the result of the production and all of that stuff. Okay, like that is a hypothetical long-term outcome, okay? But the immediate impact of tariffs are like these ridiculous trade deficits, okay? The question is simple. So the problem is the trade deficit. The solution is tariff the fuck out of the world. Well, hello? Find one time in history where blackmailing the world resolves in a positive outcome for the country that blackmails. And a sub question to that would be, have you ever heard of retaliation? Now, earlier in the podcast, I brought up 1929 time frame through 1933 Smoot-Hawley Act during the Hoover presidency. The idea was initially to protect agriculture, but it spread to 20,000 other items. And because of the magnitude of that tariff, the rest of the world decided to retaliate, meaning that, I mean, there are two forms of retaliation, right? Like if you hit Mexico with a 25% tariff, well, Mexico can come back and say, well, okay, fuck you, we'll raise tariffs on you, 25% on the stuff that we're getting from you. Canada can say, well, you're going to tariff us, we're going to tariff you. China could say, you're going to tariff, I mean, basically it's a form of retaliation is the other country does the same thing to you. And in some instances, it could really backfire because, hey, you may be raising a tariff to 25% on something you really need from Mexico, but then you're hurting so many jobs because, well, the tariffs that Mexico is placing on something is really going to impact a sector of the U.S. economy by a much greater extent than what you think. So, these retaliatory measures, I mean, that is what the world ended up implementing against the United States in 1929, 1933. Basically said, okay, well, you're going to tariff us, we're going to tariff the fuck out of you too. Okay, and as a result, the products from the United States, okay, we're no longer in demand in Europe and other parts of the world. So basically, a partial outcome of the Tariff Act in the 1929, 1930s was the result that the whole world retaliated against the United States and they stopped consuming the products that United States was producing. Anything from, eggs to, firearms to, I mean, there was a whole lot of spectrum that was impacted. So naturally, that costed the United States a lot of jobs, whole sectors, factories shut down. I mean, the hunger, unemployment. So that was one of the outcomes of the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act back then. Now, so this is the one form that countries could retaliate right now. And it seems like that is a very high outcome probability, considering that, the president of Mexico and Trump, they keep going at it. It's ugly. I mean, it is, he wants to rename the Gulf of Mexico into the Gulf of America. The Mexican president say, well, then we'll have to rename United States of America into United Mexico, because actually the old map, that's what it has on it. So, and like the fact that, people are tired of United States pushing them around, I mean, that is just one example. But, I mean, the worst outcome of this Trump versus Mexico situation, I mean, it could resolve into a war. I mean, don't forget, the entire state of Texas was a part of Mexico, and it was taken by the United States by force. And who's to say that the United States would not increase its troop presence at the Mexican border, use the context of, well, hey, we cannot let all these drugs come into the country, and since you guys cannot stop it, we're going to go into your country and we're going to eradicate all these drug dealers. Before you know, United States troops are on Mexican soil, and United States is trying to, this could be the next fucking Gaza, okay, where United States is actually trying to take a part of Mexican territory into its possession. After all, that's the Trump's idea. Where does he get this idea to increase United States territory, right? Where does he get that idea? It's the McNeely study, the 1896 through 1901 McNeely presidency. Okay, again, he campaigned on peace, but as a result, you got Spanish War. As a result, you've got a massacre in Philippines where United States troops go absolutely ballistic trying to take over Philippines, kill 100,000 of Filipinos, rape their women, crazy shit happening. I mean, that's how United States got Puerto Rico. That's how United States got Hawaii. It was all during the McKinley presidency. Guam, all this territorial expansion, all these ideas he's learning from the McKinley presidency. Why do you think he's going after Greenland? Complete, like, total fucking insanity in robbery during fucking daylight. I mean, we're going to send troops. We're going to fucking take over. Yeah, that's Reagan administration. We're going to send troops to Grenada. Fucking take over because we don't like this shit. Like, look, if you study those three presidencies, okay, the Reagan administration and the McKinley administration, you know exactly where Trump is getting all these fucking war ideas. And so war is not going to stop, okay? It's going to escalate. And since he's so sure he's going to, go out there and by using force, he's going to increase United States territory, I wouldn't be shocked if one of the moves would be to send troops to Mexico under, pretend that, well, we got to eradicate all these drugs and criminality. And before you know, part of Mexico could be a part of the United States. So it could get really ugly, guys, but that is something that could literally be taking place. And that's only going to contribute to the inflation situation. So inflation is going to go to the fucking moon, guys. Inflation is absolutely going to explode. The way you trade inflation, the easiest trade that you can put on inflation is short U.S. government bonds. Okay? Now, there's multiple ways you could short it. Clearly, you can just go buy puts on TLT. But the best way to short them is you can short options on bond futures, just like we buy puts or calls on gold futures or oil futures. You can do the same thing on bond futures. The ticker for that is /ZB. /ZB is a 30-year bond, and you can trade options on it just like you would trade options on SPY or anything else. But you got to make sure you get your account approved for trading options on futures, which a lot of you, despite of me recording thousands of videos on how critical and important that, a lot of you still don't have that account set up. So make sure you're prepared to trade this bond crash, because it is absolutely inevitable. This is the surest fucking trade that you can be putting on. Inflation is going to be moving to the fucking moon like nobody is pricing it right now. And that means bonds will absolutely fucking collapse. So, understanding this, guys, there's a lot of other trades you could be putting on as a result. But you would want to do that with a 13 market moves coach, guys. So there's so much more stuff, guys, I'd like to cover in this podcast, but we're out of time. So make sure you don't miss the next one. I'm going to be bringing some more details to what's happening and how you could be trading this. If you want some specific trades going into next week, if you want to put together some phenomenal, colossal 50x, 100x trades, they are going to be happening next week. And you want to set yourself up to trade with a coach. Because if you try to do it, look, same trade that we took on MSTR puts, okay? I had some guys that were in the general trading group. They took the trade. They maybe made like 5, 10x. The guys that traded with the coach made 80x on the trade in the last 2 hours of the trading sessions. That's the difference with trading with a coach or trading by yourself. I mean, in some of these podcasts, I'm giving you some general ideas of what could be happening in the market, some of the major moves, some of the major direction of certain things that could be going. But the way you trade it makes a huge difference on the outcome of your trade, your entries, your exit. So that's why if you really want to have a rock star 2025 trading year, you go to 13mmtv.com, click on the big orange button, you go to 13marketmoves.com, put in your information, get in touch with a trading coach here at 13 Market Moves, and be ready to trade. This could be a phenomenal trading year for some of you guys that missed some of the killer trades recently. I mean, this is your turn, so don't be missing out. And guys, don't miss the next podcast, because I'm gonna be breaking down some of the other underlying market conditions that could resolve into some super easy trades for you, and therefore your trading account in 2025, guys. If you still have not made $1 million in trading, and I'm not talking to someone that comes in and starts with 500,000. If you still have not made $1 million in trading, and you're trading with account size of 5K, 10K, 50K, I mean, you need to take action now. You need to go to 13mmtv.com, click the orange button, and get this shit done right now.